March 15, 1946. New York Times, Harlem nightclub fire. Authorities declare it accidental. March 16, 1946. Amsterdam News. KKK attempted to kill 237 people. Bumpy Johnson saves Harlem. March 17, 1946. Daily News. Prominent businessman missing. Police launch investigation. March 18, 1946. New York Post. Body recovered from the Hudson River, victim linked to extremist organizations. 4 headlines. For days, 2 completely different narratives. White newspapers labeled it an accident, buried it on page 14, and moved on by the weekend. Black newspapers called it attempted mass murder, placed it on the front page, and identified the Ku Klux Klan. On March 14, 1946, the KKK tried to burn 237 people alive inside a Harlem jazz club while they were dancing and celebrating life. They failed because one man refused to let his community burn. 3 days later, the KKK leader who ordered the attack was discovered floating in the Hudson River. A white hood forced so far down his throat that the coroner required surgical tools. To remove it, the NYPD investigated for 2 weeks, then quietly closed the case. Not because they couldn't solve it, but because they didn't want to dig any deeper, and they would have uncovered KKK ties within their own ranks. Proof the system had failed, and evidence that a black gangster delivered justice when the law would not. This is the story mainstream newspapers refused to print. The story that became Harlem legend. The story that taught the KKK that northern black communities do not burn quietly. March 1946. World War II had ended less than a year earlier. Black soldiers were returning from Europe, where they had fought Nazis, where they had been treated like human beings, where they had seen what freedom actually looked like. Then they came back to America. Back to Jim Crow. Back to colored only water fountains. Back to being called boy by white men half their age. Harlem in 1946 was volatile. Tens of thousands of black veterans trained to fight were returning to a neighborhood exhausted from enduring disrespect. The white power structure noticed. The KKK had always served as the South's enforcement arm. After the war, they quietly expanded north, recruiting police officers, politicians, and businessmen. Their message was simple. The war was over, and it was time to put black people back in their place. Harlem became their test case. Bumpy Johnson was 40 years old in 1946. He had spent years building his empire policy banks, protection rackets, legitimate businesses, but he was beginning to think about legacy, about creating something that gave Harlem pride. That is why he invested in the Lenox Lounge. Officially, the ownership papers belonged to Theodore Wright, a legitimate businessman who needed Bumpy's backing and protection. Everyone knew Bumpy was the real power behind it. He invested $40,000. 3 stories. Capacity 4. 250 people. The finest sound system in Harlem. What set the Lenox apart was Bumpy's insistence on paying musicians double the standard rate. They hired an all-black staff and charged prices working-class Harlem families could afford. By early 1946, the club had been operating for nearly 2 years. Duke Ellington performed there. Billie Holiday. Charlie Parker. It was the hottest spot in Harlem, and that kind of attention always attracts the wrong eyes. There was a man whose identity historians have never fully confirmed. Police records and Klan documents from the era refer to him by the codename the Warden. In his mid-40s, he owned hardware stores in the Bronx and Queens, was a respected businessman, and, according to FBI files declassified decades later, secretly served as the Grand Dragon of New York's KKK chapter. The Warden moved from Georgia in 1938 after being linked to 14 church burnings in the South. When federal investigators began asking questions, he relocated north and rebuilt his image, but he brought the Klan with him. By 1946, his network included more than 300 members in New York City, among them police officers, politicians, and union leaders. The warden's strategy differed from the old Southern Klan. No public demonstrations. Instead, economic warfare. Identify successful black businesses and destroy them through accidents. In early 1946, he chose the Lenox Lounge, not only because it was profitable, but because of what it symbolized. A black man building something. Independent, competing with white establishments and giving Harlem pride. White supremacy could not tolerate black independence. March 14, 1946, Thursday night. 11:03 p.m., the Lenox Lounge was crowded with 237 people. The Count Basie Orchestra was midway through its second set, horns blasting. Rhythm sections swinging, the dance floor filled with couples moving as if they were born to the music. Bumpy sat in his usual spot on the second-floor balcony, Illinois. Gordon across from him. Below them, Harlem's best were dancing, laughing, living. This was what Bumpy had built. This moment. This joy. Outside, in the darkness behind the club, 3 men dressed in dark clothing moved quickly and silently. They had been there for 20 minutes, pouring gasoline along the foundation, soaking the wooden back door, splashing accelerant across the walls. Professional work. Practiced at 11:08 p.m., they struck their matches. Inside, a woman screamed, not playful, but pure terror. The music faltered. Heads turned toward the back of the club, where thick black smoke poured beneath the door. Then, fire flames crawling up the walls like living creatures. For one frozen second, no one moved. Then, chaos exploded. People rushed toward the front exit, shoving, screaming. Bumpy was already in motion. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his old prison knee injury protesting, but he ignored it. Illinois, get the front door open. Get them out. The front exit clogged too many people forcing through at once. Someone would die in the crush if it wasn't controlled. Bumpy climbed onto a table, pulled his .45, and fired one shot into the ceiling. The gunshot cut through the panic. Everyone stopped and turned toward him. Listen to me. His voice carried over the screams. We're getting everyone out. But if you panic, people die. You understand? Move in order. Help each other. Go. The crowd began moving again, this time organized. People helped one another. The strong supported the weak, but the fire spread rapidly. The entire back wall was engulfed. Flames reached the second floor. The heat became unbearable. Bumpy counted heads as people passed him, the band. All 16 together, the waiters. Bartenders, kitchen staff. Then he realized someone was missing. Where are the bathroom attendants? They'd been in the back near the fire. He grabbed Illinois. How many people were in the bathrooms? 2 attendants, maybe some patrons. I don't know. Get everyone else out. Going back. Bumped the whole back of the building, but Bumpy was already running toward the flames. The bathroom hallway was filled with thick, choking smoke. He pulled his jacket over his face and kept moving. He found the men's room, 3 people. Inside, 2 patrons and 1 attendant, confused and disoriented. Out, now, follow me. He shoved them forward. They stumbled through the smoke, coughing, crying. Next, the women's bathroom. The door was stuck, warped by heat. Bumpy kicked it once. Twice, on the 3rd kick, it gave way. 2 women inside. Marie, the bathroom attendant, in her 50s, who had worked there since opening, and a young patron, maybe 20, frozen with fear. Marie tried to move her, but the girl wouldn't budge. Bumpy didn't have time for gentle. He grabbed the girl and threw her over his shoulder. She was light, but his lungs burned. He seized Marie's hand and ran behind them. The back wall collapsed with a roar. The heat was like standing in front of an open furnace. Bumpy's chest burned. He couldn't see. He couldn't breathe. He kept moving, relying on memory, praying he was headed the right way. Then fresh air. The front entrance, Illinois grabbed him and pulled him onto the sidewalk. Bumpy dropped to his knees, coughing violently. He set the young woman down gently as she cried and thanked him. Marie knelt beside him, coughing but alive. "How many?" Bumpy gasped. "How many made it out?" Illinois counted faces, checking against memory. "I count 237. Everyone made it out." Bumpy looked back. The building was fully engulfed flames, bursting from every window, the roof beginning to collapse. They had barely made it, but everyone lived. Then Bumpy saw them. 3 figures across the street, standing in the shadows, watching the fire, watching their work, watching Bumpy. One of them was smiling. Bumpy tried to stand. His legs failed. Illinois caught him. "Bump. Those men," Bumpy pointed. "Get them." Illinois looked, but the figures were already retreating, vanishing into the darkness. "I can't leave you. Get them." Illinois hesitated for a second, then ran. Bumpy stayed on the sidewalk, coughing, every breath like swallowing glass. Marie knelt beside him. "Mr. Johnson, you need a hospital." "I'm fine." He wasn't, but he couldn't show weakness. Not now. Not in front of everyone. 2 minutes later, Illinois returned, dragging a man. Not one of the 3 watchers. Someone else, young, white. Terrified, caught him 2 blocks away, Illinois said. Gasoline on his hands. Bumpy forced himself upright and walked over. "Who are you?" The man shook uncontrollably. I don't." Bumpy grabbed his collar. 237 people were in that building. "You tried to burn them alive. Who sent you?" I can't. They'll kill me." Illinois punched him, breaking. His nose, blood streamed down his face. "He can't talk here," Bumpy said hoarsely. "Too many people. Take him to the Brook Avenue warehouse. I'll be there in an hour." By 11:52 p.m., fire trucks arrived. Too late. The building was lost. At 2:47 a.m., the fire marshal arrived and immediately wrote, "Accidental fire." An NYPD captain stood beside him. Electrical, old building. Faulty wiring, Bumpy approached, burned and injured. "That's what you're going with? Accidental?" The captain's hand moved toward his nightstick. "Mr. Johnson, you're lucky. Could have been a real tragedy. Could have been a massacre," Bumpy said. "The fire was set. We caught one of them. He'll talk." "Where is this witness?" "Somewhere safe." "I don't trust you to protect him." The captain's face hardened. "If you're holding someone, I'm protecting a witness. You're calling attempted mass murder an accident. So yes, I'm handling it myself." Bumpy turned away, then stopped. "You've made your position clear, Captain. Now I'll make mine." "Oh, warehouse." 3:30 a.m. The arsonist sat tied to a chair. His name was David Miller. 28, unemployed, desperate. "Who hired you?" "I can't. They'll kill me." "I'll kill you if you don't." Bumpy's voice stayed calm. "I needed money. My wife's sick." They offered $500. I didn't know there were people inside. There were 237 people. I swear, I didn't know. Illinois stepped forward. "Who hired you?" "They call him the warden." "Where do I find him?" "I don't know. They gave me gas. Instructions. That's it." Bumpy stood. "You'll tell me everything. Then you'll leave New York forever. Or you die. Choose." Miller talked. Meetings in Astoria, hardware stores, KKK, white hoods, terrorizing Harlem. "Let him go," Bumpy said. "Give him $50 and a bus ticket." "Anywhere but here," Illinois asked. "You believe him? About the warehouse? Not about ignorance." "I want the man who gave the order." By Friday afternoon, Harlem knew three things. The Klan had tried mass murder. Bumpy Johnson saved 237 lives. And Bumpy was hunting. On Saturday night, Illinois watched the Astoria warehouse. 7 cars, men in suits, then a black Cadillac, mid-40s. Gray suit, fedora. Authority.Illinois followed him to Westchester. Big house. I found him, Illinois told Bumpy. Address and plate, not at home, Bumpy said. We wait. Sunday morning, the warden left with his family. Bumpy watched. He couldn't touch him, not yet. Too messy. Too many witnesses. But Sunday evening at 7:30 p.m., the warden left his house alone and drove back into the Bronx to one of his hardware stores. He parked in the rear lot empty at this hour. The store was closed on Sundays. He unlocked the back door and went inside. Lights snapped on in a second-floor office. Bumpy turned to Illinois and Eddie Williams. Eddie, watch the street. If anyone comes, whistle twice. Illinois, you're with me. They moved fast. The back door was still unlocked. The warden had left it that way alone, feeling safe, expecting no trouble. They climbed the stairs without a sound and found the office door open. The warden sat at his desk. Papers spread out, a calculator clicking, completely absorbed in his work. Bumpy stepped into the doorway, gun raised. Don't move. Don't make a sound. The warden's head snapped up. His face drained white. Who? What do you want? Stand up, slow. Hands where I can see them. The warden stood, his eyes flicking toward the phone on the desk. Don't. Bumpy said quietly. You reach for that phone. I put a bullet through your head. Understand? The warden nodded. You know who I am? He studied Bumpy's face. Recognition hit, then terror. You're Bumpy Johnson. That's right. And Thursday night, you tried to burn 237 people alive in my club. I don't know what. Illinois stepped forward and drove a fist into his stomach. The warden doubled over, gasping. When he looked up, blood was on his lips. Let's try again, Bumpy said, coughing painfully, tasting blood, swallowing it. You ordered the fire. Your people poured gasoline and struck matches while my club was packed, while people were dancing, while women and children were inside celebrating life. You tried to commit mass murder. The warden wheezed, fighting for air. Oh, you can't. Prove anything. I have protection, police, politicians. You can't do this. I'm not trying to prove anything, Bumpy said. I'm not a cop, and this isn't a trial. Bumpy pressed the gun to the warden's head. Oh, you're coming. With us, you're going to walk out of this building, get in your car, and Illinois is going to drive while I sit in back with you. If you scream, if you run, if you do anything except what I tell you, I shoot you right there in the parking lot. Understood? He understood. He had no choice. 5 minutes later, they were driving. The warden sat in the back seat beside Bumpy. A gun pressed into his ribs. Illinois drove. Eddie followed in Bumpy's car. Where are we going? The warden asked. The river, Bumpy said, coughing deep and painful, tasting blood. Swallowing it, the warden began to hyperventilate. Please, please, I have a family. So did the 237 people you tried to murder, Bumpy said. They had families, children, futures. You tried to erase all of that because you couldn't stand seeing black people happy and free. They drove in silence for 25 minutes through the Bronx and into Upper Manhattan. To a deserted pier on the Hudson River, dark water, darker sky. Distant city lights reflecting across the waves. Bumpy marched the warden to the end of the pier and forced him to kneel on the wet wood. What's your real name? I can't. Bumpy pressed the gun barrel to the back of his head. Your name, Warden. Warden Cross. That's what they call me in the organization. Why did you try to kill those people, Warden? Orders from the National Council, Cross said. We were supposed to make an example. Show Harlem couldn't challenge us. Show that Colorads who got too uppity would be put back in their place. Who else was involved? Who actually set the fire? Cross gave names. David Miller, the one they had already caught. 2 others who had poured the gasoline and struck the matches. That, everyone. Yes, Cross said. I swear. Everyone involved in planning and execution. Bumpy pulled out the white hood Illinois had found in Miller's car when they released him. He held it up so Cross could see the KKK insignia in the moonlight. Open your mouth. Cross's eyes went wide with sudden understanding and terror. What? No. Please God, no. Bumpy pressed the gun barrel hard against Cross's temple. I won't ask again. Cross opened his mouth. Tears streamed down his face. Bumpy moved fast, hit him with the butt of the gun. Not hard enough to fully knock him out, but enough to make his muscles go slack and his resistance fade. Cross's eyes rolled back. His body swayed, and in that moment, Bumpy began forcing the hood into his mouth. It took work. The fabric bunched and resisted. Cross's throat tried to reject it, even in his semi-conscious state. But Bumpy stayed patient and methodical, pushing it deeper with his fingers, then using the gun barrel to drive it past the back of the tongue and into the throat. Cross's eyes snapped back into focus. Consciousness returned just in time for him to understand what was happening. He tried to cough, to gag, to expel it. But it was too deep, too tangled. His hands rose weakly, clawing at his own throat. Nails drawing blood as he fought for air. That wouldn't come. You tried to burn 237 people alive, Bumpy said. You failed. Now you know Harlem protects its own. Come for us. We come for you. Then he rolled the body off the pier and into the Hudson. It floated for a moment, face down, the white shirt bright against the dark water, before the current caught it and pulled it downstream toward the city by dawn. Bumpy was back in Harlem, Illinois. Was waiting? It's done. It's done, Bumpy said, coughing hard. What about the other 2? It's the ones who actually set the fire. We'll handle them. You need to rest. No. I want to be there when we find them. I want them to know why they're dying. The body was found at 6:23 a.m. by a sanitation worker near Pier 57. The medical examiner arrived and found the hood partially lodged in the esophagus and trachea. Cross had died from suffocations, slowly and painfully, and there was a note pinned to his chest. Mainstream media was protecting itself and its advertisers. The Amsterdam News wasn't careful at all. KKK Grand Dragon found dead. Harlem celebrates justice. The article laid out everything: the attempted mass murder at the Lenox Lounge, the 237 lives Bumpy had saved, and now this. The leader responsible found dead with a KKK hood forced into his mouth. Monday evening, Bumpy walked into Small's Paradise, a jazz club on 135th Street. He sat at the bar and ordered whiskey, and the entire club went quiet. Then a woman in the front row stood up, crying. You saved my daughter's life that night. She was in the bathroom. You carried her out. She walked to Bumpy and kissed his cheek. Thank you. Thank you so much. Then the whole club stood, not just applauding, but crying, shouting his name, reaching out to touch him as he sat there, because half the people in that room had been at the Lenox Lounge on March 14th. And half of them owed Bumpy Johnson their lives. When the noise finally faded, Bumpy spoke, his voice hoarse but carrying through the room. Warden Cross tried to kill all of you, tried to burn 237 people alive, not because of anything you did, but because you were black and you were happy. Because seeing us celebrate our culture, our music, our joy, that terrified him more than any gun ever could. So he tried to erase us, to burn us out of existence. But he failed. We survived. And now he's dead. And the KKK knows something they didn't know before. You come for Harlem. Harlem comes back twice as hard. He finished his drink, stood, and walked out. The message was clear, and everyone understood it. Over the next week, the other two arsonists were found. One was shot in his Bronx apartment. The other disappeared, and his body was found 3 days later in a vacant lot in Brooklyn, killed by a beating. The NYPD investigated both deaths and found nothing. Harlem wouldn't talk. And why would they? These men had tried to murder 237 people, and Bumpy Johnson had delivered justice when the law wouldn't. After 2 weeks, the police closed all 3 cases, not because they couldn't solve them. Everyone knew who was responsible, but because solving them would mean admitting police officers had KKK connections, that they had covered up an attempted mass murder, that the system had failed, and a black gangster had stepped in to deliver justice himself. It was easier to let it go. The FBI opened a brief investigation and closed it after 2 weeks. Their official memo, declassified decades later, read, "Investigation into recent deaths has produced no actionable intelligence. Assessment indicates internal dispute with an extremist organization, not a federal matter." Translation: we know what happened, and we're not touching it. April 1946. Construction crews arrived at the burned-out shell of the Lenox Lounge, not to tear it down, but to rebuild it. Theodore Wright stood there with blueprints and 30 black construction workers. And Bumpy Johnson stood beside him with $85,000 in cash. The insurance company had denied the claim suspicious circumstances. They said Devon, though the fire marshal had ruled it accidental. So Bumpy paid out of his own pocket. This time he built it better. Steel reinforcements, fireproof materials. A sprinkler system rare for 1946. But Bumpy insisted. Multiple exits, state-of-the-art wiring, and a massive safe in the office. Fireproof and bomb-proof, because if someone tried this again. Bumpy wanted to be ready. The construction took 9 months longer than Bumpy wanted, but he insisted on quality. He insisted on hiring black architects, black engineers, black construction workers, keeping money in the community. Building something meant to last. While construction continued, something else happened. Black veterans started coming to Bumpy not for work in his illegal operations, but for protection, advice, support, because they had seen what he did. Seen him stand up to the KKK and win, and they wanted to learn how to do the same. Bumpy started holding meetings, small groups, teaching them not crime, but strategy, how to organize, how to protect your community, how to fight back against injustice without bringing heat from the feds. Some historians believe this became the beginning of what would later be Harlem's civil rights infrastructure, the networks, the organizing principles, the willingness to fight back. It started with Bumpy Johnson in 1946 teaching black veterans that dignity isn't given, it's taken. January 14, 1947. The Lenox Lounge reopened. An opening night drew 450 people, 150 over capacity, but nobody cared. Dizzy Gillespie performed, and the crowd went wild. In the front row sat 24 black veterans still in uniform, men who had fought in Europe and returned expecting America to change. During his set, Dizzy paused and looked at the 237 survivors scattered throughout the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, 237 of us wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for the man sitting in that booth up there. He ran into fire when everyone else was running out. He carried people on his back, risked his life for hours. And then he made sure the people who tried to kill us paid for it with their lives. Mr. Bumpy Johnson, Harlem doesn't just respect you. Harlem loves you. The crowd erupted in a standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes. Bumpy didn't stand, didn't wave, he just nodded once. Because for him, this wasn't about glory or recognition. It was about principle. You don't try to murder Harlem and walk away. The Lenox Lounge operated for the next 12 years without a single incident, no fires. No threats, no problems, because everyone remembered what happened to the last people who tried to destroy it. The KKK never attempted another attack in Harlem. They continued to exist, continued to recruit, continued to spread hatred across the country, but they understood boundaries, now lines you didn't cross. Harlem was one of those lines. Warden Cross's death was never officially solved. The NYPD file stayed open for years, then was archived in 1959 and forgotten by everyone except those who remembered. Cross became a cautionary tale whispered in Klan circles for decades. There was a Grand Dragon in New York who tried to burn Harlem, and they found him in the river with his hood forced into his mouth. Don't make his mistake. Bumpy never spoke about it publicly, never confirmed or denied involvement, but he kept one thing from that night: the note he had pinned to Cross's chest. He framed it and hung it in his office above the Lenox Lounge, a reminder that justice doesn't always come from courtrooms and judges. Sometimes it comes from men who decide enough is enough. That fear goes both ways. That if you try to terrorize people, they might terrorize you back. So here's what really happened. In March 1946, the Ku Klux Klan believed it could import Southern terrorism into northern cities, commit mass murder, and walk away. Mind black people to stay in their place. They were wrong. They underestimated Bumpy Johnson. They underestimated what a man will do when you try to murder his community. They underestimated Harlem's willingness to fight back. And they underestimated post-war black veterans who had learned to fight and weren't afraid to use those skills at home. For headlines over 4 days told two completely different stories. March 15th, white newspapers said accidental fire. March 15th, black newspapers said attempted mass murder. March 17th, prominent businessman missing. March 18th, body found in the Hudson. White America saw an accident and moved on. Black America saw attempted genocide and justice delivered. And after March 1946, there was no question anymore. Northern blacks could fight back and win. Warden Cross thought he was sending a message when he tried to burn the Lenox Lounge with 237 people inside. He did send a message, just not the one he intended, because 3 days later, his body in the Hudson with a KKK hood forced into his mouth sent a different message entirely. Try to massacre Harlem, and Harlem will massacre you back. The Lenox Lounge stood until 1958, when urban renewal projects forced it to close not violence or terrorism, but legal, bureaucratic white supremacy dressed up as progress. The building was demolished in 1959, but the story remained in Harlem's oral history, in whispered tales passed from grandparents to grandchildren. In the legend of Bumpy Johnson, not only as a gangster, but as a protector, a defender, a man who fought back when no one else would. And most importantly, in the lesson that still resonates today: you can try to burn us, but you can't burn our dignity. You can't burn our pride. And you can't burn the determination of people who decided they're done being afraid. March 1946. 4 days. One man, one decision. Harlem was never the same. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, hit that subscribe button right now. We're telling the Bumpy Johnson stories history buried. The moments of black resistance the textbooks won't mention. The times when our people said enough and fought back with everything they sway.